Today, we will continue to dive into some of the highest stake fights of 2024 as today we discuss the battle for Africa that went down in Perth, Australia, between the middleweight champion of the world, Dricus Du Plessis, as he attempted to defend his championship against his arch rival, his arch nemesis, Israel Adesanya. On today's episode of Matter of Fact MMA. What's up? What's happening? Let's go. What's up, guys? We right back at it. We right back with it. It's your boy Matt, Go Cards. We are here to talk about some of the biggest high-stake fights of 2024. And today, we have Volume 2, in which we will be talking about Dricus Du Plessis attempting to defend his middleweight championship against Israel Adesanya. Please go back and check Volume 1. That was my last episode. In Volume 1, we discuss Dricus Du Plessis versus Sean Strickland. Of course, we are on to this fight, so that means Dricus won that one. Please go back and check out that video. That's the very first episode, episode 1. I do apologize. The wrong episode got uploaded, so it might not be edited, but it's still good to go. You know what I'm talking about? Your boy is still doing it. Nevertheless, today we're talking about UFC 305. It went down August the 17th, 2024 in Perth, Australia, in which Dricus Du Plessis, the middleweight champion of the world, who has now defeated Sean Strickland, goes out there against his arch nemesis, his arch rival, Israel Adesanya. What makes this fight so interesting beyond the war of words and the feud between these two men is, for one, it was a really good fight, but for two, it was all the things centered around the lead up to the fight. So you have to look at it like, as I spoke about in my last episode, we're just going to go through it really quick. Dricus Du Plessis was questioned a long time ago while Israel was still the middleweight champion, what he thought about him, what he thought about, him being the champion. He didn't really have too many negative things to say about Adesanya, but the key thing is that he said that once he won the middleweight championship, I should say, he would be the true rightful African champion in the UFC. This was taken by Israel. He ran with it. He twisted it into something else that it wasn't. Apartheid came up. There was a lot of, race baiting done by, at that time, Israel's buddy, Ariel Helwani, who really tried to race bait Dricus into, a whole lot of things I really don't think Dricus meant. Dricus really was just trying to say something to get under the champion's skin to eventually manifest a championship fight. Even Chael Sonnen, who was the master of getting under people's skin, even co-signed that he didn't agree with what Ariel and Izzy were saying. It wasn't a matter of, a true African and, we're not going to get into the racial side of it. But that had already took place, all right? That had already went down. They had already gone back and forth. Both men had went on Ariel's show separately, of course, said what they said about each other. We don't need to rehash that. What made a lot of this interesting was, if you go back, the reason why Sean Strickland even got a title shot and became the middleweight champion was after Dricus Du Plessis defeated Robert Whittaker. He was too injured to go into a short notice title fight against Izzy. Okay? This is what the UFC was trying to force him to do. This is what Israel Adesanya was calling for. But Dricus was basically like, I have a broken foot, or I believe he had a really, really badly injured foot. And he was basically like, I can't turn around in 5 to 6 weeks. After this fight I just had with Robert, I got this injury. I'm not going to be ready. Izzy pushed the issue. Dricus still pushed back and said, I will not be ready. Now, at this moment, Izzy could have went on about his business. He did not have to fight, okay? Now, I believe that this fight went down in Australia. he didn't have to fight, but he was so gung-ho, he was so set on trying to defend his championship there in Australia, he forced the issue, and the UFC then entered Sean Strickland into the fight. And then, of course, famously, Izzy took that L. So now when you fast forward to this, you have to understand that had Izzy just waited, as if Izzy had just waited and been like, okay, Dricus is not ready, I'm not gonna fight. UFC, find somebody else, and I'll come back when Dricus is ready, and we'll do the fight. He would have entered that fight as the champion, but because he was arrogant, he was cocky, he forced the issue. Thus, he went out there and got his you-know-what beat by Sean Strickland. Then Dricus went on to beat Strickland. So now we move forward to this fight in Perth, Australia, in which Israel Adesanya was now going to be the challenger for the middleweight championship against his arch nemesis, his arch rival, who is Dricus Du Plessis. What made this fight also interesting, before it went down, there was definitely a war of words, but as you entered into fight week, what was very interesting is it seemed that Dricus was armed and prepared for the war of words that week. Also, shout out to the MMA guru who actually did an interview with Dricus Du Plessis, and behind the scenes armed him with a lot of ammo, I'm talking about, to use against Izzy. Because pretty much by this point, Izzy had fallen out of favor with the fans, and there was a lot of ammo to use against him. He was really kind of getting to be to a despicable person. I'm talking about? Not John Jones level despicable, but despicable nonetheless. And what was key to that was that everyone was waiting to see this press conference, the press conference for UFC 305. In the press conference, Dricus seemed armed. He seemed ready. Israel Adesanya seemed a little bit off. He didn't really seem to be on his A game. Excuse me. Your boy been a little sick the last couple of days, which is why this video's coming to you a little bit later than I anticipated. But nevertheless, Dricus Du Plessis seemed to be ready for the microphone for the war of words. Izzy didn't. And one of the key points of this press conference was a point in which Dricus Du Plessis called out Izzy for having servants while he was growing up and basically questioned how hard at times did he really come from. And then in one of the craziest moments in press conference history, Israel Adesanya full-blown breaks down crying and starts yelling at Dricus, saying, "You don't know my story. You don't know where I came from." And then Dricus shuts him down with one of the greatest comebacks. And it was quick. And he was like, "I don't care about your story." And it was literally like Izzy was crushed. He was this big. He was crying in front of his family on the stage. And he vowed that he was going to make Dricus Du Plessis pay for everything that he said. We'll see about that, little bro. Nevertheless, the stage was set. UFC 305, Perth, Australia. Dricus Du Plessis versus Israel Adesanya. Round one, Izzy came out sharp. Izzy came out with good, strong jabs. Good body kicks to Dricus Du Plessis. I think he might only landed maybe two, but they were good. They were solid. What was interesting about Izzy in that first round is, and I spoke about this in the previous fight, he kept extending his arm. He would throw a jab, and I realize this camera might be inverted, but I'm throwing a right jab. He would throw a jab, to kind of keep, Dricus at range, keep him at distance. But what was so interesting is he kept extending his arm. And I talked about this. Actually, it was Sean Strickland versus Dricus Du Plessis. Sean Strickland used this tactic. So I wonder if Izzy picked up on this from that. He would extend his jab arm right when Dricus was about to fire a shot back. Thus, when Dricus's shot would fire, which was usually a hook of some sort or overhand right, this long extended arm of Izzy basically threw off the accuracy or the aim of Dricus's punches. So a lot of the punches, Izzy didn't even have to slip or evade. A lot of them, he could extend that jab arm because, Izzy's got that long reach as well. He could extend that. And as Dricus would throw the shot, it would just barely, as I'm using my phone to simulate, just barely miss Izzy. And Izzy did not really have to move a lot or really try to evade, which left Izzy ready for another strong jab to Dricus after Dricus would miss. This was a great tactic. Round one was really good. Dricus had a few moments. He landed a few shots. He was clearly throwing with more punching power, but Izzy definitely did the work. I gave round one to Izzy. As we go into round two was very interesting. The first half of this round, Izzy was putting it on Dricus. Great jabs, great body work. Then he hit him with a strong body kick, as well as a lot of, they weren't really uppercuts to the body, but just little small hooks, little strong punches to the body, right? Good body work. And at one point, he hurt Dricus to the body. And then Dricus dove on his ankle. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he dove hard, bro. Dove on his ankle. Got a good takedown on Izzy. Izzy was taken down. I believe, let me check my notes real quick. I believe this is when we got the infamous cage grab from Izzy that John Anik tried to cover up because everybody always has to make up for everything that Adesanya does. Yeah, so Dricus drug him to the ground. Israel Adesanya began to grab the cage to try to get back to his feet. John Anik even said the referee has said that Izzy is grabbing the cage. I didn't see it. Of course you didn't see it because the UFC sets out to make everything easy for Adesanya. Nevertheless, as I'm checking my notes here, Izzy eventually gets back to his feet. But once he gets back to his feet, the second half of this round went to Dricus Du Plessis. Because once Izzy got back to his feet, he was kind of pinned up against the cage, and Dricus really started to open up shots on him to the head and to the body, and he's swinging with power. On this round, this was kind of a 50-50 round. I mean, it includes some takedowns in it, but it's like the first half went to Izzy. I'd say the last half of it went to Dricus. Then we move on to round three. Round three, Izzy goes to work. With the body shots, because Dricus kept utilizing this high guard, this high tight guard that John Anik and DC, mainly DC and Dominic Cruz, kept talking about. Dricus had more of a guarding style like this to kind of guard his face, I believe, from the jabs that Izzy was throwing at him. What was interesting about this is Izzy, right on time, being an elite striker, began to just work the body. So as Dricus is up here, he's just going right to the body, right to the stomach, right to the rib cage. And Dricus is eating those shots. He's having to eat those shots. And this is what makes most people who are fans of Steel Knox, Dricus Du Plessis, this is why you're a fan, because this man gets hurt. This man starts losing his wind. He started losing his stamina. He started to gas. And what's so interesting about his style is he pushes through to the point where his opponent really can't believe that he's pushing through. And then he starts to mount his own offense. He started to throw these wild overhand rights as only Steel Knox can. I've dubbed those the Steel Knox overhand right. And he's just winging them. And while a lot of them are missing Izzy, some of them are hitting the guard of Izzy. But if they landed or they hit the guard, Izzy was getting hurt. You know what I'm saying? And this became very interesting, as well as Dricus still was trying to utilize the takedowns. Let me check my notes again, because this was all around. This was a good back and forth fight. And when I'm taking a look here, at one point in the third round, Izzy lands a spinning elbow, which caught Dricus, of course, off guard, rocked him a little bit. When of course that definitely rocked Dricus, but I want to say didn't rock him like he's wobbled or he's getting ready to fall to the ground. But it stopped him for a slight second. Like he had to pause. He had to be like, oh, excuse me, sir. You know what I'm talking about? It kind of hit him. Nevertheless, Izzy went for another spinning elbow. This time, Dricus was ready for it. And he drilled him with a right hand. Drilled Izzy with a right hand. This got Izzy to kind of stumble. Some people believe it was a stumble. Some people believe he fell. Either way, he kind of stumbled off of this one. Great back and forth between both men. Dricus is that dude, man. So is Izzy. This was a great fight. Let's move on to the fourth round. Fourth round is really the key round. At the beginning of the fourth round, Izzy is letting go with his hands, and he's doing devastating body work against Dricus Du Plessis. However, Dricus Du Plessis would fire back with a left, ended with the overhand right. He was swinging with so much force, so much power. Even though some of these shots were missing and he was just winging them, he still just kept firing, and eventually he would land, and it would cause Adesanya to slow up on his own offense. As these two continue to battle, we actually get to a point where Dricus lands a hard shot to Izzy. Izzy falls backwards, right? Falls backwards. Looked like to me he had actually, I wouldn't say dropped him like he dropped him like a flash knockout, but in my opinion, he stunned him so bad, Izzy kind of dropped down. Now, Izzy later on, Izzy would say that he slipped. Didn't look like he slipped to me. Nevertheless, Dricus hits him with a hard shot. Izzy somewhat falls. When he gets back, this was one of the most intriguing moments of the fight. Izzy points to the ground, Max Holloway-esque, point to the ground like he's ready to stand and bang. One of the best moments of this fight, excuse me, one of the best moments of this fight, being a Steel Knots Dricus Du Plessis fan, is when Izzy pointed to the ground like he was ready to throw down. Dricus obliged him and literally went forward and started firing off shots. Israel Adesanya was not prepared for that fury that Dricus unleashed, and he caught him quite a few times. It backed Izzy up against the fence. Izzy kind of staggered to get away. As he staggered to get away, Dricus takes him down to the ground. As they're down to the ground, Israel scrambles to try to get some sort of point of leverage. Dricus takes his back, sinks in the choke. At this moment, I am losing my ish in my living room. I am going crazy because he slides the arm under the neck, the forearm under the neck. And at this moment, I knew Israel Adesanya's goose was cooked. You know what I'm saying? And you have to think about this, okay? These two men have been waging the war of words for like 2 years, all right? And Israel and Ariel Helwani had spun this entire story that Dricus Du Plessis was trying to do a lot of racist things, say a lot of mean things about Africans. He's the real African, of course, by him being from South Africa. This sparked a whole lot of apartheid talk, and it just went left. And you have to think about this. While Dricus had the championship, Israel Adesanya actually had everything to lose, because not only would he lose his chance to regain his championship, you also have to think about the fact that a lot of people were like, is Izzy washed because he went out there and got waxed by Sean Strickland, right? Then you also have to think about Israel on his podcast with his brother David. So many different episodes, they were talking trash about Dricus, talking down to him, talking about how his style was terrible and he wasn't a good fighter. Then he kept talking, saying a lot of racially charged words toward Dricus. You also have to remember when Dricus beat, who did he beat? When Dricus defeated, Robert Whitaker. They brought a drunken Israel Adesanya in the ring, in which he race baited Dricus again, trying to get him to say the N-word. You know what I'm saying? Trying to get him to get off base, say something that would get the entire fan base to turn against him. Which was pretty despicable tactic by Izzy. But nevertheless, you have to understand the portrait that I'm trying to paint here. Think about everything Izzy had said. He had made the world believe Dricus was not in his league. He could not beat Izzy. He made everyone believe that due to apartheid, a lot of other things, that Dricus just was a racist South African. You know what I'm saying? Which was not the case. Also, you have to understand that all of these things he had said, he kept saying that he was going to dispose of Dricus. He was going to punish him. He wasn't going to finish him early. He was going to punish him. He was going to show him who the true African was. He was going to show him where he was from, being Izzy, where Izzy was from, and where Dricus really was from, and what he was made of, and what his ancestors were made of. Because Izzy took it there. Dricus never took it there. Izzy took it there, right? You also have to understand that at the pre-fight press conference, this man broke down crying in front of his family, in front of his Mom Dukes in the front row. He done started crying. And he's talking about he's going to show him who the true African is. Talking about he's going to put him down for his own family, for all the struggles that he claims his family went through or had. It was all on the line. And at this moment, an arm was underneath of his chin. The throat was exposed. And Dricus cinched it up. And at that moment, the war for Africa was won. Because Israel Adesanya, all of you Izzy fans, all of you Izzy marks, you know, I've always felt like Izzy was an outstanding fighter. Top 5 middleweights, best middleweights of all time, maybe top 3. You know, some people say top 2. Some people say number 1. I don't give him number 1. I give that to Anderson Silva. But nevertheless, I never went at him about his fighting. I just think he's a despicable person outside of fighting. I just don't really like him. He's just so nerdy and lame to me, right? But at this moment, Israel Adesanya didn't just wait and go out. He actually tapped to Dricus Du Plessis. The referee stops the fight. Your and still middleweight champion of the world, Dricus, still knocks Du Plessis. And he defeats Israel Adesanya. Then, in an amazing moment of sportsmanship, class, and character, not shown by Adesanya, Dricus Du Plessis, once Israel is back to his feet, extends his hand, shakes his hand, even hugs Izzy, apologizes for anything that could have been misconstrued by him or dusty-ass Ariel Helwani, and showed the man, hey, dude, you know, we went in here, we threw down. This was an amazing fight. I appreciate you for taking this fight. On the microphone after, when interviewed, Dricus Du Plessis showed respect to Israel Adesanya again. Talked about him as being one of the greatest middleweights of all time. One of the best middleweight champions of all time. Gave him his props. Gave him his respect. Apologized to anything that Izzy or his family might have taken the wrong way. Classy individual. Stand-up guy. True champion. Because we all know, if Israel Adesanya had won that fight, he would have heaved trash, dirt, and everything else he could drum up on Dricus Du Plessis. He would not have shown that sportsmanship. He would not have been that good character. We all know this. We know Izzy's character. And the fact that when Izzy was interviewed after, he had to eat it. Because at that moment, the fans were cheering for Dricus. And he had to eat it and he had to give respect to Dricus Du Plessis. Because not only did he win the fight, but he went out there and he made you tap. You didn't even go out to the choke. You tapped. Outstanding moment in mixed martial arts. Outstanding moment between these two outstanding men. You have, and then on top of that, when the fight was over at the post-fight press conference, Dricus Du Plessis goes into the locker room of Israel Adesanya and apologizes to him face to face again without the cameras. Also apologizes to his family. Also, Dricus Du Plessis gives the man the coat. It was a special made coat that he had made, you know, with a couple of different things on it about Africa or South Africa. Gave it to Israel Adesanya. Just gave it to him. Just as a show of appreciation for taking the fight. Outstanding, man. Outstanding showing of mixed martial arts, the respect between these two men. And since then, you don't really hear of either man really disrespecting each other. And I mean, in all honesty, what can Izzy really say? You know what I'm saying? You let down Africa. Not really, but you did. So it's like, what can he really say? Nevertheless, dude, this was one of the biggest high-stakes fights of 2024 because it was all on the line. Had Dricus lost that fight, Izzy would have went on one of the biggest parades, championship win parades ever seen. He would have managed to try to turn all of Africa, not just South Africa, against Dricus. He would have said so many demeaning, low-down, dirty things to him because, as Izzy has admitted out of his own mouth, he's a petty person. He's a petty individual. But that didn't happen. Dricus won. Dricus got all the respect. He got all the glory. And he didn't even rub it in Izzy's face. He shared that spotlight. He shared those fans with him. He shared many moments after the fight with him. And it was outstanding to see. Outstanding to see, bro. So shout out to Still Knox Dricus Du Plessis, the reigning middleweight champion of the world. As well, shout out to Israel Adesanya. Like I said, in my opinion, top two, I don't know, who knows the run Dricus will go on. Top two middleweights of all time. Maybe, maybe I'll bump him down to 3 because we'll see what Dricus does. Right now, Anderson number 1, Izzy number 2. I got to give him that. Outstanding fighter. Outstanding matchup between these two. One of my favorite fights of the entire year. It was a lot to cover because I needed to set that stage. I wish I could get into more of the X's and the O's of the actual fight. The techniques being used by both men, because it was really an outstanding fight, but not a lot of time there to really get into that. But nevertheless, dude, outstanding work by Dricus Du Plessis, Israel Adesanya, UFC 305. Dricus is the victor, and we move forward. And I'm checking my notes here, make sure we kind of went over everything. From here, we're going to move into one of the biggest fights of 2024. One of the biggest cards in UFC history. We're going to be covering Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill, light heavyweight championship on the line at UFC 300. That's where we headed next. That's what we're going to get into on part 3, episode 3 of 2024's most high-stake fights. So once again, I do want to thank you for checking out these episodes, these special episodes. And I do want to thank you for joining me for another episode of Matter of Fact MMA. And I'll check you next time. Peace.